"Whatever can this be?" said Alice. "It's not like anything I've seen before." And Alice might well have been talking about this place. Strange though it may seem, I'm not at home, but at school. I'm at the Eveline Lowe Primary School in southeast London. And unlike Alice, I'm not dreaming. But this school was once a dream in the minds of educationists and architects. And after many visits to primary schools and discussions with teaching staff and more visits, they decided that what was needed by teachers and children alike was flexibility of space. Space like this. Created in such a way as to give scope for individual use, expansion and discovery. Space to experiment, to look at books, quiet space for listening, and as I say, space for constructing and playing. Nooks and crannies where a child can work in private, be by oneself. Large open areas too, for groups making models together or trying out musical instruments. Space which overflowed naturally out into the covered areas.
Children can move in and out of the classrooms with plenty of freedom, and they can do a lot of their work out of doors. There's a pleasant, relaxed feeling, and the teachers welcome the parents and encourage them to feel that it's their school too. People who live in high flats find it a nice change to come to a single-story building with little lawns and courtyards. This little white rail is a sort of symbol of the cooperation between the school and home, and there's no barrier between them. Parents may come and go where and when they please, and the children like to show them their work and the places where they play. Research has shown that the attitude of parents to the school is important to the progress the children make. As the children arrive, they go straight in and pick up the work of the previous day, where they left off. Assembly takes place later. There's time to get together and make friends, whether you're an adult, a teacher, or a child. Hello, cooks. Who's been making all these cakes? Here. What's this? Come and show me. What have you made?
Queen cakes.
Cream cakes. Queen cakes. All for the Queen. How lovely. Oh, for you. Well, I never. What's in them?
Currants.
And anything else?
No. Sugar.
Currants and sugar.
Milk, butter, flour.
And
Margarine.
did you make?
And then, yeah.
Very good. And what's going to happen to them now? Throw them away?
No. Put them in the oven. Put them in the oven and eat them when they're down.
Where's the oven?
Over there.
How long do they stay in the oven?
Till tonight.
Do they? Yeah, this is a nice way to clean the dishes, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is this what we do?
No.
Pardon? Who's dead? Miss. Hello, Miss. Are you a cookery teacher?
No, I'm just a mother.
You're just a mother.
I just come over here to help with the cooking.
Do you come every week?
Oh, no.
Just when you can?
Yes.
Let's get them in the oven then, shall we? Oh, it's warm already. Mothers often help out in this school. They enjoy it. The children find them a natural link with home. Qualified teachers find them a help, doing simple jobs under their supervision. That's right. Come this way. That's it. Don't touch the door. You come back with me. That's right. Is that a lot? At the end of this corridor, there's a classroom where the 8 to 9-year-olds are working. Cooperative teaching is practiced throughout the school, and Mrs. Wellborn and Mr. Border have 2 adjoining classrooms. Both the teachers get to know all the children in both classes individually, and they can each contribute different teaching skills. They must know each other's minds and discuss the children together a great deal, but one can easily stand in for the other in case of illness or even a coffee break.
It looks as though he's the god of the river. And he's found on a ship, was it?
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think they had these gods on the ends of the ships, on the bows of the ship?
Protect the people inside, sir.
Protect the people inside, yeah. Rather interesting. Now, how are you actually going to make the head of the god?
I'm going to pull out the nose, sir. And
Pull out the nose, what, from the actual clay?
clay, sir, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And from the eyes and doing a hole.
Hey, Pete, can you come here a minute? We've just been looking at your writing, look, and we've got down there about you making the campus. Is the campus in there? Where is it? Oh, I think we put it on the table in there, actually. Can you explain that to us? We wondered what it meant. And the hand is magnetised. What did you do?
Yeah, I had the magnet and I stroked it.
What did you stroke?
The pin.
Oh, you got a pin. And then you got the magnet.
Pete can make a compass, but finds it difficult to talk about it. With these children, the teacher's skill lies in helping the child to put his ideas into words. Children in these classes are allowed to talk freely to each other, and the environment is arranged so that they have plenty to talk about.
A Roman lamp. When do you think they used
One of the ways in which Mr. Border stimulates language is by getting them to explain the craft work they're doing.
Why did you choose that particular lamp out of these?
It's the hardest one.
Because it's the hardest. You like things that are hard, do you? Yeah. How are you going to manage to do this spout? This looks rather complicated.
The pencil.
How do you mean? Show me.
Work of this quality doesn't just happen. The children need something to trigger them off, something to look at and observe closely, something which they'll want to model and write about and study. The teachers provide interesting displays and well-chosen books with good pictures, cunningly placed beside them. Another source of stimulus is taking children out on expeditions. Many of the treasures shown were collected by the children on the mudflats of the River Thames. For nearly 2,000 years, Londoners have been throwing things into the river, and every tide turns over a bit of London's history. Mr. Border often takes the children down to see what they can find: coins, tessellated paving, fragments of clay pipes and crockery. Things which can later be identified with the help of books. There's so much to see and do. Country children are not the only ones who can be interested in their natural environment and can be taken out on expeditions to discover and explore. River water can be collected, filtered and examined. A student on teaching practice helps them to measure the height of the bridge. The River Thames has its natural history too. All sorts of general experience is being gained. The teacher can help them to widen and evaluate this experience in the weeks to come, provided the children keep careful sketches and records. Here the children are measuring and timing the rise of the incoming tide. It's best not to take too large a group on an expedition like this, but to let the children take it in turns. Back in the classroom, Mrs. Wellborn is looking after the children who've been left behind. This is another advantage of cooperative teaching. There's plenty for them to do. They can follow up work which they did when they went on an expedition. Mrs. Wellborn knows enough about what happened to be able to participate in interests which Mr. Border has triggered off. For example, the experience of practical mathematics. Measuring the height of the bridge will be followed up later in the classroom by either teacher. Experience leads to a desire to communicate. But there are many ways of communicating: mathematics, drawing, writing and talking. Collecting and observing objects leads both to imaginative work and to objective study.
You've drawn them here, haven't you? Triangle, triangle, triangle.
Now what's he found? Is it just a bit of rubbish or treasure trove? It looks like a horse's jawbone. Perhaps it could be checked against a picture of a horse's skeleton, and that might lead to a study of anatomy.
Okay, come on, Valerie. Spill them out then. Don't throw them down. Spill them out then.
The useless stuff can be thrown away, and the interesting bits taken back for further examination. There'll be much to discuss and talk about. This will develop language and vocabulary and lead to more precise thinking.
Hurry, was it you that found the leeches there?
Yes, sir.
Interesting things, aren't they? You see them all? Do you actually know what sort of creatures they are? What they do?
No, sir.
You know, does anyone know what they do?
They're like slugs.
Like slugs, yes. What do slugs actually do? Where do you find slugs?
Yeah, on our things that find in bottles, sir.
They're usually stuck on rocks, aren't they?
Yeah.
Well, where did you find the actual leeches?
So, the first three I found, I lifted up a rock to find something underneath it, sir. Because I thought I might find something underneath the rock, sir. And I found 3 leeches underneath, sir.
On the actual rock? They're
Yes,
stuck
sir.
on the rock?
Yes, sir.
Well, I wonder what they use to stick. Can you see?
So there's just a spot on it stick. You could see it when Mary was bringing them home. There was a little spot on them and they stick to the glass.
It looks like a sucker, in fact.
Yeah. They must be you told us that the bus finger there went why?
Yeah. I heard a story, actually. I don't know whether it's true or not, but in the olden times they used leeches. Does anyone know about that?
For what, sir? Torturing.
Pardon?
Torturing.
Not for torturing, no. No, the doctors used them. Do you know about that?
No.
I don't know whether it's true, but I've heard that, well, I know in the olden days the doctors used to let blood out of people if they were ill, you see, because they thought that if you sort of relieved the blood pressure, then people would feel better. Well, this...
They used them for sucking the blood out?
Yes, that's right. They used the leeches as blood sucking, because it was the best way of doing it, you see. It wouldn't be very nice for the doctor to have done it, so they used the leeches. And I heard that in the doctor's office, you know, amongst all the bottles of the medicine and so on, you always found a bottle of leeches. Perhaps some of you could find that out.
My dad told me about that, because I asked him about that, those red and white things outside the barbers.
Oh, yeah? He told you about those?
Yes, sir.
Well, perhaps you could find something out in one of the history books about leeches, and if they were used in medicine or not. I think so, yeah. Oh, what have we got? Yeah, I think this is our most exciting find here. Does anyone know what this is?
That is the piece of the bowl and the clay pipe, isn't it?
The bowl of the pipe. Why do you think we found such a lot of clay pipes?
Because people didn't actually get to them. They didn't use clay pipes. pipes a lot.
When they were
Michael's talking now.
And when they were using them, when they finished with them, they put them in their pocket. And when they were walking along, they spray.
Yes, that's right. Why do you think we found such a lot together?
So because they threw them in the Thames when they broke.
And the Thames must have, the water
Swept
must
them
have
all on
washed
the
them out.
beach, all in the same.
Yes, that's right. Did you see these ones with actually some writing on?
So this one's got
There's another one. Yes, this one's got Williams written on it and an address, 94 Clip. That's all I can see of it.
So I like
How do you think?
spotted ones.
Yeah. Why do you think?
that colour, sir, with the blue?
Probably the weather. But why do you think they actually had writing on them? Or the name of the person it belonged to?
So it wouldn't lose them, sir.
So they wouldn't get muddled up with the other pipes.
take it back.
What other pipes there?
And the other minute.
Yeah, well, sometimes, you see, along that part of the Thames, there were a lot of pubs, weren't there? You sort of been to see some of them. Remember we went to see the Anchor? The Anchor. And probably the men that went there every night had their own pipes in the actual pub. So that when they went there, they had their name on it, so they took their own pipe, didn't they? Yeah. One thing, though, a question for you. What do you think the oldest pipe could be? If you found the oldest pipe possible, how old could it be, do you think?
1,000 years.
1,000 years?
About very early Elizabethan.
Why would you say very early Elizabethan?
Because Sir Walter Raleigh bought the
What did he bring back? No, he didn't bring back pipes, did
he
he?
bought the tobacco back.
That's right, and where did he bring it back from?
America from the Indians.
From the Indians, yeah. Actually, there's a story about that, perhaps, which, do you know it?
He told us.
Oh, is that? Well, come on, what was the story? See if you can remember.
Sir Walter Raleigh, he brought back some tobacco, he put it in his pipe, and his servant came in and said, "Oh, my master's on fire." He went to get a bucket of water and he chucked it over.
That's right, yes.
So I wonder why that's the small, it looks like charcoal.
Looks like charcoal. Perhaps it's probably a very small pipe. It,
Might have been.
do you think people smoked a lot in the Elizabethan times?
Yes, sir.
What sort of people do you think smoked?
Old men.
Old men? Why old men?
Because my granddad used to have a pipe and lots of other men have pipes.
Yes, they do,
And
rather.
when I was on boat, the men used to do that.
Because the pipes might have got in the Thames in that spot because of where the Anchor pub is. Well, they might have broke there and in there, and as they come out, they might have chucked them over.
Probably had too much to drink and broke their pipes, yeah.
David Ned, the architect, always said that he designed the school specifically to meet the needs of this area in order that the children living in the high flats should have an opportunity of playing and living on the ground floor, as it were. And you'll see that the outside of the school is very plain, but the inside of the school is interesting. The whole of the school turns into this inner courtyard where the interest lies, so that you're not aware of being surrounded by busy roads or heavy traffic. No.
Must be something of an oasis for the children.
Well, this is what I'm trying to achieve. This is what the staff and I decided from the very outset, that what we wanted to establish in the area was a village school. Because although the children live in these high flats, the needs of the parents and the needs of the children are very much those that one would meet in a village. We want parents to feel that they can come in and use the school. We want them to feel that perhaps they can use the school in the evening when we're not here. And
this is
so that we
encouraged.
are a sort of big family.
Would you say that you were also learning together, because this is a new situation for many of the teachers here?
Yes. Well, I say I've been teaching for over 20 years now, and I learn every day. And we do learn from each other, and we learn from the children. It's a difficult situation for teachers. It makes tremendous demands on them. It has compensations, of course, but when we encounter difficulties, we are able to get together and talk things over, and working with the children in the way we do. As I say, we constantly learn from each other and from the children every day.
You say the situation is demanding for teachers. I'm glad you made that point, because some people looking at it might think that this was an easy wicket for teachers. But you say it's demanding. Is it sometimes too demanding for them?
Well, I think you might think it's an easy wicket until you look at what the children are doing. You may just sort of take an overall picture and think, oh, yes, they're playing, until you really sit with them and talk to them and see what they're doing. And then you realize that there is purpose in everything they do. And this, of course, the purpose is there because the teachers are there behind, guiding it and setting up the environment. And this can only be done if there is continual interaction between the staff, between the parents too, and between the children. We talk with the children, we talk with each other.
Talking of teachers as a whole, you seem to have an awful lot of them here, and perhaps some watching would be counting children in ratio to teachers. What is in fact the situation?
No, this is what everybody says, but it's not true. We are exactly the same as any other ILEA school. We have 40 children to a teacher, and in our lower age range, certainly up to 8, we are completely full. But with our 9-year-olds, we still have room because we are growing. Next year, you see, we shall have more, and the year after we shall be the 60. But we do supplement our staff by having students with us, and we do have students. Every teacher has a student for a whole term, every term. This, I know, is a bee in my bonnet, but it also, I believe, this is how students should work in school, and they are our junior members of staff.
Some boys from Creedon School, nearby, have spent many weeks building a boat for the children's pool, and now they've come to help launch it. Little children need to get to know older boys. Activities shared with Big Brother have an importance and significance. And older ones need a chance to do something for those younger. It brings out all that's most constructive in them. From earliest babyhood, water is soothing and interesting to children. It relaxes them and gives them plenty to think about. How are ripples formed? What is spray? Why doesn't the boat sink? For these London children on a hot summer's day, what could give them greater pleasure than to splash about and get cool?
I tell you who I was talking to today, and that was Victor. He was reading to me, and I don't know if you've noticed, but to find that when he's picking his own books, he doesn't really stretch himself.
No, that's true. Actually, it comes through in the stories he writes as well. His stories tend to be rather on the same sort of level,
That's it,
don't
yeah.
they?
He was writing a story today about the magic toy shop, and it was a nice little story. But
At the end of the day, Mrs. Wellborn and Mr. Border share their observations of the children's work. Without this discussion of children's progress, cooperative teaching would be impossible.
About animals, he likes sort of fairy stories, if you like, legends, and there are lots of extracts in that. But the standard of reading is so much higher than the sort of thing that he has been reading.
Because we're only just sort of getting him out of the habit of ending his stories with happily ever after.
Yeah. I do think, quite honestly, that he perhaps needs some help. Not help with the reading.
Just sort of suggestions of the books he might read.
And I think we must talk to him more about the sort of books that he has been reading.
On a different point, I was noticing when I was looking through this book on slides that Dorothy and Linda are doing a lot of their work together. You know, they seem to have sort of developed a friendship. not only this, I think a lot of their written work is done on the same subject and so on. You think this is sort of a good thing to sort of keep on?
Well, I think it's very good from Dorothy, because remember how we were so worried about her when Lindsay left, and we thought, oh, what's she going to do? She's going to be absolutely lost.
Yeah.
And I think also it's very good for Linda, because it's made her, in a way, stretch herself. Because she's been sort of working with Dorothy, and they've not been competing with each other, but they've sort of been developing their ideas and discussing things.
Every day, the whole of Eveline Lowe School meets in the school hall for assembly. It's a family occasion. Some music is played on the gramophone, and each teacher settles down quietly with her own little flock to listen. The classes take it in turn to show some of the work they've been doing. Then they say a prayer they've written themselves and sing a hymn they've chosen. The Thames children have made up a story about smugglers rowing up the river. They act it in mime. They've composed some incidental music to go with it.
It was a misty night. The moon was shining and it was very dark. It was so dark, it was like walking in a cave at night.